So I am back with another Pets at Home care guide for rats, and I think it's been about 4 years since I reacted to one of their care guides, and I noticed it looks a little bit different. I don't really go in Pets at Home that often, so I noticed it was different and I thought I'd have a look to see if it's any better, if it's the same, if it's worse than the care guide I reacted to about 4 years ago. Now, the first thing I noticed off the bat about this leaflet, and this is such a petty thing to comment on, is they've used probably the most common stock photo of rats on Google, but it is the most pixelated, poor quality picture you could find of rats, and it just looks rubbish. But anyway, on to the important stuff. It is in partnership with the RSPCA, and it seems like there is a lot of information on the inside, so let's see if that's actually any good or not. So, starting off, it says rats can make good family pets, but may be better suited to adults or older children as they're more active after dark when younger children may have gone to bed. As rats enjoy company, you should keep them in same-sex pairs or groups. So that is good information to start with. I don't recommend any small young children to be the sole carer of small pets. They can be unpredictable, especially if you're getting them from somewhere like Pets at Home, which can make them quite difficult to handle. Not just them being awake when it's dark or dawn and dusk. So yeah, that's good information. Likely to live 2 to 2.5 years, though some may live longer. I would be tempted to put some may also live less than that. Again, especially if you're getting them from a chain pet store that isn't breeding them for good health and longevity. And then it just has a link to the RSPCA page on rats. And I do wish in stores they had things like QR codes or something that people could scan that would lead them to websites instead, just because they can be updated a lot quicker than things like this or books that can quickly need changing or become outdated. So I feel like the days of like leaflets and pamphlets isn't really a thing anymore, just because these can be wrong and it's so hard once you put so many into production to go back and change them. So I feel like just websites nowadays is going to be a lot better. Lots to do. Rats are active and love to play and explore. Add lots of tunnels, ropes, toys, hammocks and ladders to explore and keep them busy. They also love to dig tunnels and burrows. These energetic, intelligent pets need plenty of suitable activities to keep them stimulated, fit and healthy, as they can quickly become bored. So that is all great, important information. I just wish they would have gone a bit more into detail about what kind of activities and specific toys you can use with them, just to keep them entertained. It is a little bit vague in that area that new time first owners aren't really going to know what kind of toys are going to be safe or helpful or enriching for rats. Best buddies. Rats enjoy company. I would change that to rats need company to really stress that point. So we recommend you choose a same-sex pair or group. Ideally buy them together so you know they're already friends. Yes, I would also add ideally buy them together because most rats in pet stores are going to be young, and it's so important they have same age company so they develop properly. However, new rats can sometimes be carefully introduced later. Yep, that's true. There's no mention in this of how to do that if you want to, so you're going to be on your own with that one. I do have videos on my channel of how to introduce rats safely later on if you want to add more. Provide lots of space and hiding places so they can get away from each other if they want to. Check them daily to make sure they are getting on. If they start to fall out, you will need to house them separately to prevent any injuries. Yes, although it doesn't really go into detail about what falling out looks like, which can be quite hard for a new owner to distinguish. And yes, if it's really, really bad, you will need to separate them temporarily, although this kind of paints a picture of that being forever. So yeah, although you might need to separate those specific rats and take further action like neutering or something, they then shouldn't be alone forever. Rats like nothing more than making their own nest include shelters where rats can build a comfy nest and snuggle down together in the dark. Pop in some paper tissue or dust-free soft hay that they can chew and shred. Do not use cotton wool for bedding or synthetic fibres, which may get caught around limbs or cause blockages if eaten. Yep, that's good. Ideally, shelters should have 2 entrances so they can't be trapped inside or prevented from entering by another rat. Yeah, that's also a really good point. I mostly would follow that advice if they've just been newly put together. Rats that are fine, they've been living together for a while. You can use single entrance hides and houses if you want to. Position your cage out of direct sunlight and drafts and keep away from radiators and electrical equipment. Try to keep it in a place where the lights go off around the same time each night. Rats may be up at night and exercise a lot, so a bedroom may not be the best place for them, but it should be somewhere quiet where they can rest undisturbed away from other pets. So that paragraph, the end part, is really good. I think this should hopefully stop so many rats being bought for children and being kept in their bedrooms and then weeks later being rehomed because they just can't cope with the lack of sleep and being kept awake by the rats. That does happen so often, so that part's good, and also the other part about being kept away from other pets. Rats need lots of room, so a large cage designed especially for rats is a must. I really wish, I know they don't tend to, I wish they had specifically stated what kind of size cage, because a large cage to me is like a double Critination Little Zoo Ventura cage. To others, to the general public, a large cage might not be anywhere near that, so I wish they had specified just how big it has to be, but they don't tend to. With lots of levels to give extra floor space to scamper and scurry about on, a hamster cage simply isn't big enough and won't do. It should have a solid floor, as wire mesh floors can lead to foot problems, but the sides can be wire as rats love to climb. Yep, that seems to be the information they put in the last one, if I remember correctly. I think they went into like not having wire-based cages in that one. Clean your rat's cage at least weekly with hot water and a disinfectant that's safe for pets. Change their bedding, but keep a little bit of the previous dry, unsoiled nesting back. So that does tend to be the general information they give you in these kind of care guides. Depending on the size of your cage and how much bedding you're giving them, weekly might be a little bit too much and a bit overkill when it comes to cleaning out all of the bedding, and that can sometimes lead to them scent marking more because you're taking away that smell. So putting a bit back can help that. Rats can find cleaning their cage stressful as it removes familiar scents. Cleaning is a job best done in the evenings when your rats are naturally awake. I mean, yes, you can do if you want to. Just clean the cage whenever you've got time to do it. If your rats are asleep and you transfer them into a carrier, for example, to clean out their cage, they're just going to go back to sleep in the carrier, so they won't mind too much. So that seems to be everything on their cage and their setup and items for them. I'm not seeing a huge section on like bedding and substrates and things. They've got a huge like double spread on feeding them, which I feel like I'd rather prefer they use that section, that space, to go more into depth about things like cage size and safe items and unsafe items, which they probably won't do because they still sell unsafe items even now in their stores for rats and other small pets. But yeah, that seems to be it for cage setup. Ceramic bowls are best for rats. They can't chew them, you can clean them easily, and they're hard to knock over. Rats also like to forage for their food, so you should scatter food around the cage for them to find. I really appreciate they've added that in. I don't think that was in the last one, so maybe they've listened. But yeah, that is such an important part of owning rats, is scatter feeding, just because it's so enriching for them. They could have gone into more detail about why that is, but I appreciate that being in there. To make sure rats get everything they need, we feed them Pets at Home rat nuggets. These include all the vitamins and minerals they need in their diet and means they can't skip bits as they might with muesli mixes. So the thing about muesli, they said this in their last one, if you're feeding a high quality, good mix, feeding it properly, not giving them too much, they're not going to leave a bunch of that and miss out on nutrients. The Pets at Home rat nuggets, it's well known by this point in the rat community that they're not good quality, they've not got good ingredients, and that can lead to health issues later on. So it's really not recommended to feed those to your rats. We know getting a new pet can be an exciting time, but before you commit, why not take some time to talk through these questions with your family? I feel like this is the bit the RSPCA has made them add, because pet stores benefit from people impulsively buying pets and everything that goes with them. So I really appreciate this section being in here, and it says, who are the rats for? Do think carefully about who will look after your rats. They're mainly active at night, so we'll be waking up when young children go to bed. They might not be the most suitable pets for families with young children. I mean, they can be great if the adults are solely responsible and the kids are getting involved here and there. If older children look after them, remember an adult will be responsible for ensuring they are cared for properly every day. Can I afford rats? Rats aren't cheap pets. The cost of food, bedding, toys, holiday care and vet fees soon add up. Yes. Remember, rats are social species, so you should have at least 2 or more, and if they fall out they'll need separate cages, toys and bedding, and neutering and more friends. But they've not added that bit. Can I commit to looking after rats? The average rat lives for 2 to 2.5 years, but it could be longer. In that time, older children may leave home. That is so important. So many people get pets like chinchillas, for example, and then in a couple of years, they go away to university, can't take them with them, and then that ends up being rehomed. Also, think how often you may go away on holiday. Who will care for your rats every day? Rats can be wonderful pets, but they need wonderful owners too. So that whole paragraph was great, although it does kind of insinuate that rats are only a 2 to 2.5 year commitment. They can be a much longer commitment because you have got to meet their social needs and continue getting more rats or rehome them just to make sure they're not alone. So it can be a continuous commitment to keep getting more and more rats if you're not willing to rehome them, because those last couple of rats can't be alone if they start to pass away. Changes do happen, and if you can no longer care for a pet you brought from us, please get in touch so we can try to rehome them. Never abandon your pet or let them loose in the wild. Glad they've added that bit, although it doesn't really take away from the fact that people are still impulsively buying pets from chain pet stores, notably this one, and filling rescues because so many rats and other pets are being dumped, found outside, being neglected, because people just don't know what they're getting in for. So grateful they added that, although they are still very greatly responsible for how many pets are in rescues at the moment. Moving house can be stressful for rats. Let them settle in for a few days before handling them. They may sneeze as they get used to their new home, but this should stop after a few days. If not, see your vet. That's really interesting they've added that. I don't think that was in the other care guide 4 years ago. New home sniffles are a thing, and I'm really surprised they put that specific info in, but that is good. Bonding with a rat takes time, and it'll be a while before you can pick yours up. Only if you get them from somewhere like Pets at Home, where they've not been handled, they've not been bred to have a good temperament. If you get rats from a good ethical breeder, most of the time they're going to be wanting to interact with you pretty much from day one, so take that with a pinch of salt. Keep an eye on rats when they're out of the cage. They naturally like to chew, so they may find all kinds of unhealthy and unsuitable objects to gnaw on. Yes, they will. As well as ladders and platforms, add ropes and a rat wheel to the cage so your rats can burn off even more energy. Why not try clicker training too? Rats are quick learners and eager to work for a favourite treat. Some owners have a separate playpen outside the cage for the rats to exercise in. Move them there in the evenings when they're most active. Yep, that's good advice. I've not really recommended what kind of playpen to use. You can also just rat-proof the room and let them run around in there instead. Like all rodents, rats' teeth keep on growing, so keep wooden gnawing toys, blocks and mineral stones in their cage at all times to help prevent problems. Check their teeth regularly, and if anything's wrong, see your vet. So mineral stones, don't give those to your rats. They don't really serve a purpose. They're not great. They're a thing from like the 90s that people used to give to their hamsters. You don't need them. They shouldn't be having all those extra minerals to eat in one go, so just skip the mineral stones. And again, it's quite vague. It just says if anything's wrong with their teeth. Most people that are first time rat owners aren't going to know what wrong is, so it could have gone into a bit more detail. Rats aren't as tough as you may think and need lots of care. Watch out for sneezing, a dull spiky coat, bald patches, dry or irritated skin and lethargy. Changes in eating, drinking or behaviour can also be a sign that rats are poorly. You may also see red flecks around the nose and eyes. This isn't blood but porphyrin, a sign they're stressed. If you spot any of these symptoms, see your vet. I'm glad they've added in the bit about porphyrin because not many first time rat owners know about that, and it can be really freaky when you first see it. But again, it's not always a reason to worry. Some rats, when they first wake up, do have a little bit of porphyrin, and a little bit of it's not always a cause for concern. Travelling is stressful for rats. Yes, a little bit. Some rats do travel really well, so I wouldn't let that put you off travelling with them if you have to. But if you have to go to the vets, take them in their cage or plastic carrier box. To calm them, move rat pairs or groups together and pop some familiar bedding in there too. Yes, that part is great they've added that because some rats do really benefit from having a friend go with them to the vets. You don't have to take the whole group. You can just pick and choose which one to take with them if you have got a larger group. Some situations like serious surgeries and things, you might not be able to or might not need to bring a friend with them, so it is a case-by-case basis. Oh, and then it has our pet's health promise. We promise that if your pet falls ill within 6 weeks of purchase and your vet believes the disease was contracted before purchase, we will cover your vet bill to treat it. I have known people that this has happened to them, and some stores have been really good with either offering their own vets or covering vet bills. On the other hand, I have known of cases where they kind of washed their hands of the rats, or they've had rats that have been purchased pregnant and they've not wanted to help with things like supplies or vet costs. I think it really does depend on the store. Caring for rats is a big responsibility. If you think you're ready, have researched, and you're committed to caring for them for their whole lives, why not consider giving a home to one of the rescue rats at our Pets at Home Foundation centres, RSPCA animal centres across England and other animal charities. I always really appreciate that section because it's kind of suggesting other options that hopefully people are going to listen to. They're never really going to suggest breeders because it is the RSPCA that's helping them write this, but that is going to be a better option than purchasing pets that have been bred in pet mills, rodent mills, from chain pet stores like Pets at Home. And then on the back it just has a happy rat checklist with everything they supposedly need, which is a large cage, a rat house for each rat in the cage for sleeping, tubes, tunnels and boxes, suitable bedding, e.g. paper-based. I'm guessing they mean like paper-based pellets, which is okay for the litter tray, not so much for the entire cage. They've kept that very vague. Safe nesting material, e.g. shredded paper, hammock, ceramic food bowl, a large water bottle, Pets at Home rat nuggets, healthy rat treats, a rat-sized toys, a bottle brush, gnawing toys, pet safe disinfectant, a rodent playpen, a tray for digging and safe suitable digging material for use outside the cage. So a dig box, that's good. Time every day for your new friend, a book on rats. I recommend Pet Rat Care by Zoe on Amazon. I'll link that in the description. A local vet to register your rats with. Yeah, that is one of the most important things on this list. Not just a local vet, but an exotic vet that actually knows what to look for and how to treat rats. So yeah, that is Pets at Home Rat Care Guide as of October 2024. And although there's not anything inherently dangerous or bad in there, besides maybe the Pets at Home nuggets, I do feel like they've played it very, very safe with this. They've kept things very vague, which I don't think is super helpful to first-time rat owners. Saying things like a large cage, what is a large cage? That kind of leaves it up to interpretation of the people buying the rats. What they might think is a large cage actually isn't, and they might end up neglecting their rats. So yeah, I do think it is a little bit too vague. I think they've put things in there that, although it's a great, interesting fact, they could have used that space to go into more detail about cage size, what kind of toys, more enrichment, specifics in this that I do think could have helped first-time owners a lot more than just very, very vague information. So I went back and watched the video that I did 4 years ago, reacting to their care guide back then, and that is always a jarring experience, having to watch yourself from 4 years ago. But I just wanted to see if there was any differences between the two, if there was any improvements with this one, or if the old one actually had things that weren't in this one that I thought were pretty good to keep in. And you know what? There actually was a few. So some of the differences that I did notice between the one 4 years ago and their current one this year is, in the older one it did say rats live between 2 and 3 years. And that was just setting expectations really high, especially for rats from a chain pet store that haven't been bred for longevity. It is such a genetic lottery with getting rats from Pets at Home. They can sometimes live 2 years and more. Sometimes they don't even make it to a year. So yeah, that was kind of setting new owners' expectations a little bit high, because not many rats tend to reach 3 years old in the UK. Especially not from Pets at Home. The new one does say 2 to 2.5 years, which is a bit more likely to happen. In the new care guide, it does mention the rats enjoy digging tunnels and burrows, but it doesn't mention how to get them to do that by giving them a deep layer of substrate. It just kind of glosses over the fact that rats enjoy that, but not how to give them enough bedding to do it. So yeah, that was a shame. Also, one thing I did notice when looking back at the care guide from 4 years ago, they had a whole section about setting up a rat cage and making sure you're filling that cage with plenty of things that interrupt any big gaps or heights, just to ensure the rats aren't falling and injuring themselves from any great height, because that can cause injuries. There was no mention of that in this care guide. They've just completely taken that out. They also previously in their old care guide mentioned safe and unsafe beddings, and although they got that a little bit wrong, they did say things like Aspen weren't safe, which they absolutely are safe beddings for rats. There's no mention of safe types or brands of bedding in the new one. They just completely omitted that information this time. The care guide from 4 years ago actually had a whole section, which I really appreciated them adding in. They mentioned hiding their food in toys to simulate foraging behaviours, but there's no mention of that in the new one. It just kind of really vaguely glosses over giving your rats safe toys, whatever a safe toy is, not really talking about enrichment toys, foraging toys, which I would personally argue is so important for rats, just to keep their brains active. So they've taken things from the old care guide and removed them and not really replaced them with anything of value in this one, and I would go as far as arguing that although the care guide from 4 years ago did have a couple of mistakes, things like mentioning that aspen bedding is not good, obviously it still mentioned things like using the pets at home nuggets and stuff. I would argue that care guide back then was maybe a better care guide than this one, if not for the fact that it did have a lot more information about enrichment, specific things to give to your rats. At least it didn't have blurry, pixelated pictures on every single page. But yeah, I just saw this in the store and I thought, hey, that looks a little bit different, and I'm gonna react to this in a video. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. Let me know in the comments what kind of information about rats would you put into a pets at home care guide that you think is really important for first time rat owners to know that they just haven't put into this. Let me know in the comments. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!